Billionaire's Reborn Baby Chapter 1. The door was pushed open with a click, which sounded exceptionally clear in the quiet room. A pretty girl in a white dress staggered in. With her cheeks flushing red, she leaned against the door panting. It was quite dark in the room, and she cried out in grievance and fear, "Elliot?" Her voice was soft like that of a newborn kitten, which was enticing. The man in the room wore a cold expression, but he felt his throat tighten upon hearing this. "Elliot?" The girl cried out again in a broken voice. She was afraid of the dark the most. After coming in, she stood against the wall in fear. Upon seeing the faint glow of a floor lamp shining into the room, she rushed in that direction. However, she missed a step and fell into the swimming pool by accident. Vincent Scavo's guards, hiding in the dark, looked at each other in surprise, for this girl's unexpected move indeed confused them. At the previous banquets, a lot of stupid women pretended to be drunk and sneaked into this room. The guards couldn't even remember how many of them had been thrown out. The sound of water bubbling came from the pool. A lot of water went into the girl's lungs. She continued to sink, but she kept calling her brother's name. After struggling desperately for a while, she suddenly became motionless with her entire body sinking to the bottom. The man in the dark frowned. He raised his hand, but his guards didn't take any action. They said respectfully, "Mr. Vincent, it might be her trick." As soon as they finished speaking, the girl in the pool suddenly moved. With a string of bubbles coming out from the bottom, she moved her arms and legs hard and finally emerged from the pool. It was evident that this girl was a good swimmer. The guards tacitly revealed a disdainful smile, for it was within their expectation. The man in the shadows put on a colder expression. The guards all knew that Vincent hated to be cheated the most, not to mention that he was just about to save her. After swimming ashore, Emily Britt coughed for a long time, resulting in sharp pain in the chest. Then she looked down at her hands and feet. The scar on her right leg had gone. Emily touched her face again with disbelief. Wasn't she disfigured? No, wasn't she dead? She stared at the pool in disbelief. It took her a long time to realize that she was now at the Scavos in City Y, and this whole drowning in the swimming pool thing actually happened 7 years ago. Covering her mouth, she gulped in surprise. She was reborn and went back 7 years. Tears rolled down her cheeks uncontrollably. Emily wiped away her tears over and over again. She never dreamed that she would be reborn and even go back to this day. The water in the swimming pool reflected the bright light, and Emily's face looked even redder against the clear water. She looked quite charming even while crying. There was a hint of shock and disbelief on her face a moment ago, but now, only an angry and determined expression was left. The man in the shadows slightly raised his eyebrows and recognized her as the retard from the Brits. However, judging from her expression, the man wondered if she was indeed retarded. He adjusted his posture and stared at the girl outside the French window with great interest. Crying for a long time, Emily suddenly sneezed. Feeling extremely dizzy and hot, she remembered that she was still under the effects of the aphrodisiac. Then she reached out to get some water from the pool and took a big sip. The guards were rendered speechless. This was the first time a woman had barged into Vincent's room at night just to drink his bathwater. After drinking the water, Emily patted her face and stood up. It was the end of September now, and she was chilled to the bone by the night wind. However, the miserable memory inflicted more pain on her. It was this night that her sister, Elsie Britt, tricked her into drinking the wine mixed with aphrodisiac and asked her to look for her brother here. Back then, as a retarded girl, she believed her sister. That night, she almost drowned. Fortunately, she was saved by a man. However, because of the aphrodisiac, she was all over her savior in public and was then notoriously known as a retard in City Y. As soon as she stood up, her long white dress that had been soaked in water tightly clung to her body, revealing her curvaceous figure. With her head down, she wrung out the excess water, and her nice breasts were slightly exposed because of her movement. The man in the shadows shot a cold glance at his guards, who immediately lowered their heads. However, they felt a mixture of doubt and curiosity. In the past, every woman barking into Vincent's room was half undressed. Why was this girl different? Wringing her wet dress, Emily then squeezed the water out of her dripping hair. She looked at the pitch-black room and then stepped in barefoot. She wanted to leave before her sister brought other guests over. After taking a few steps, Emily was gripped by fear and she couldn't help trembling all over. There was someone in the room. In other words, the person who saved her in her previous life might be in the darkness now. "Hello, can I borrow some clothes?" she asked softly. No one answered her, and there was an awkward silence. Emily couldn't help but flinch. "I'll take that as a yes. Thank you, I'll be grateful to you." Leaning against the wall, she groped for the light switch. After failed attempts, she tried to find the closet in the dark. By pure luck, she soon found it. She directly took off her wet dress, and she had no idea that a man was standing opposite her. Vincent stared at her beautiful figure with a meaningful look. Emily fumbled for a shirt and quickly put it on. The shirt was so long that it could cover her thigh. She suddenly felt hot all over again and her legs went limp. As she staggered forward, she lost her balance and fell with her face facing the man's crotch. The air seemed to freeze. Billionaire's Reborn Baby Chapter 2. At that very moment, the sound of footsteps came outside the door, accompanied by cries of panic. "Emily, where are you?" She couldn't have run to Mr. Vincent's room, could she? Immediately after, a group of people came to the door. Someone knocked on the door and said softly, "Mr. Vincent?" Flustered, Emily struggled to stand up. When reaching out, she touched two strong legs. With her hand trembling slightly, she tried to touch where her face had just hit. Then the man's cold voice sounded. "What's wrong?" "The youngest girl of the Brits is missing. I want to ask if she ran into your room." Emily's body was even hotter. She couldn't hear the man's voice clearly, but she somehow felt it was quite attractive. She tried to stand up, but she directly fell into the man's arms and felt his low body temperature. Grabbing his arms helplessly, Emily shouted in a trembling voice, "Please help me." Her voice was soft and sweet as that of a kitten, and a wave of desire instantly swept over Vincent. He extended his index finger to lift the girl's chin. Her face was rather pale a moment ago, but now it had turned red, which looked a little strange. Was she drugged? This made sense. "Mr. Vincent," a woman's voice came from outside the door. "Sorry to disturb you, but my sister—" "Your sister?" Vincent looked at the girl's face carefully in the darkness. Then he asked in a low but charming voice, "What does she look like?" Standing outside the door, Emily's sister broke off in mid-sentence. She didn't seem to understand why Vincent, who had always detested women, would ask such a question. However, without a second thought, she immediately described Emily's dressing today. "She's in pure white dress. Small face, big eyes. But my sister is a retard." "A retard?" Vincent exerted more strength to lift Emily's chin. She seemed to be heavily drunk with her pink lips slightly open, which looked quite seductive. Due to the strong effect of the aphrodisiac, Emily suddenly frowned and bit her lips hard. In an instant, blood oozed out and her pink lips were dyed red. Frowning, Vincent suddenly reached out his index finger and stuck it in her mouth. The guards hiding in the dark were all shocked. They never expected Vincent to go against his principle of keeping away from women. Emily was drenched in sweat all over. She vaguely felt that she had bitten someone's finger. However, she couldn't see the person clearly in the darkness, and she seemed to hear someone calling the name Vincent outside the door. "Vincent? Was it the one who died young?" "What did you say?" The man suddenly grabbed her chin with great strength. Only then did Emily realize that she had accidentally spoken out her true thoughts. Vincent Scavo was an influential figure in City Y when he took over his family's business at the age of 20. He monopolized machinery production, real estate, and other industries with high efficiency and brilliant tactics. In the following 5 years, he expanded his family's business into every industry in City Y. Now, the Scavo Corporation had shares in almost all varieties of industries in the city. It was said that Vincent was a cruel and heartless man, but his death cast a gloom over the entire city that year. Even Emily's sister Elsie wept in grief in her own room after knowing this. "Mr. Vincent," Elsie said softly outside the door again. Scram. People outside were startled, and Elsie's face even went pale. It turned out that Vincent was indeed irritable and unpredictable. The butler who led the way immediately apologized. "We are truly sorry to bother you, Mr. Vincent. We will leave now." With that, he rushed off with the others. Inside the room, Vincent's hand on Emily's neck increased its force. With a deeper frown, he fixed his cold eyes on the girl who could be strangled to death at any moment. She struggled feebly without making a sound. Her sister was standing right outside the door, but she didn't ask her for help. Instead, she held his arm and begged him to save her. Vincent suddenly put his hand down and threw her onto the ground. "Die young," he sneered. "Is that a new trick to attract my attention?" There was a touch of disdainfulness and arrogance in his tone. As a big shot in the business world, he had always been stern and unapproachable. Apart from his indifferent tone and attitude, Emily could feel that even his body was cold as an ice cellar. Everyone would be overwhelmed with fear at the sight of Vincent, but Emily wasn't intimidated by his presence at all. Lying on the ground, she gasped and said, "You will die on the morning of November 17th next year." The hiding guards instantly showed up, ready to throw this stupid girl out. However, Vincent gestured to stop them. He squatted down with a hint of coldness on his face. Wearing an evil smile, he asked, "How will I die?" Billionaire's Reborn Baby Chapter 3. Having lived a harsh previous life, the formerly retarded Emily understood everything before her rebirth. Besides, her brother never treated her as a retard. He told her everything about the outside world, be it great or small. Right now, it was as if her entire body was in a furnace, and she almost lost her consciousness from the burning sensation. However, she still managed to utter in a hoarse voice, "Chinese medicine." A look of surprise flashed across Vincent's face, and all of the guards stared at Emily with horror. Only Vincent's trusted bodyguards knew about his leg problem. Even Vincent's father had no idea about this. The TCM doctor invited was still dispensing the prescription, so Vincent even hadn't started to take the medicine yet. However, this retard from the Brit family said that Vincent would die of taking Chinese medicine next year. The guards felt a mixture of astonishment and fear. On the one hand, it was out of their expectation that a retard would know about Vincent's secret. On the other hand, she didn't seem to be joking just now. Could it be that Vincent would die young? "Go get the doctor," Vincent suddenly said. Only then did the guards find that Emily, who was on the floor, had fallen unconscious. In the banquet hall. After finishing drinking with some nobles, Beverly Britt looked into the distance with a smile. Then she whispered to her daughter, "What's going on now? Where's that retard?" Elsie frowned. "I don't know. I saw her go into Mr. Vincent's room with my own eyes, but Mr. Vincent didn't seem to have seen her at all." Beverly said with a frown, "The banquet is almost over. Go find her now." "I've looked everywhere, but I just couldn't find her." Elsie impatiently took a sip of wine. "How could a person disappear into thin air? Although she is a retard, she is still useful to us. She can't die now, so hurry up and find her." "Yes, Mum." Upon looking up, Elsie saw a doctor being led to the second floor in a hurry. She stared in that direction with confusion. After a short while, she shook her head and muttered to herself, "It's impossible for Vincent to find a doctor for that retard." Emily was having a dream now. In the dream, Elsie slashed her face with a sharp knife, and she stiffened from the overwhelming pain. She bit her lips tightly and looked at Elsie in disbelief. "Elsie, why?" Emily heard herself whispering in her dream. Why? Elsie's face suddenly darkened. Elliot ended up in misery because of you, and now you're asking me why? Our family ended up like this because of your stupid face. It's all your fault. While speaking, she stabbed the knife into Emily's chest mercilessly. Emily shrieked in fright. She immediately sat up from the bed and hugged the man standing by the bed. All the guards inside the room couldn't help gulping. The bright light sparked from crystal chandeliers. It was so dazzling that Emily closed her eyes subconsciously. At the same time, a faint smell of cigarettes and liquor came to her nostrils. She let go of him in a daze. The man slightly frowned and stared at her with deep dark eyes. He was like a fierce and powerful wild wolf ready to launch an attack. His thin lips were compressed. With an angular face, the man looked exceptionally tall and handsome in his dark black suit. Every single movement of him carried an aura of nobility. Who are you? Emily couldn't help fixing her eyes on him. He was probably the most handsome man she had ever seen. He had a straight nose, and under the thick eyebrows were two cold eyes. Although they were facing each other, she couldn't see her reflection from his eyes, as if no one else was allowed into his world. Hearing her words, the man leaned over slightly, which accentuated his beautiful jawline. You just said that I would die young. Why can't you recognize me now? Billionaire's Reborn Baby Chapter 4. Emily was dumbfounded. You were Mr. Vincent? She had always heard that Vincent was an exceptionally handsome man, but she had never met Vincent in her previous life, so she had no idea what he looked like. The doctor that had served the Scavos for more than 20 years was now gripped by fear. He even wanted to cover his ears, for he couldn't stand listening to this girl's nonsense. How could she say, die young? To the doctor's surprise, Vincent didn't throw her into the river to feed the fish. Instead, Vincent looked quite pleased. Vincent gestured to his guards, and they left with the doctor at once. Now, Emily and Vincent were the only ones in the room. Thank you, Emily gave her sincere thanks. Since the effects of the aphrodisiac had gone off, she felt much better now. However, feeling a little feeble, she didn't know if she could stand up. She groped her way to the bedside. Upon looking up, she realized she was under Vincent's steady gaze. Why were you in my room? His voice was low and deep, and pleasant to the ear. Only then did Emily think of her predicament, but she didn't know if it was too late to play dumb. Under Vincent's meaningful gaze, Emily swallowed hard and whispered, I was set up. My sister drugged me and told me my brother was here. That was why I stumbled into your room. Vincent frowned at her words. She continued in a low voice, I guess they wanted money. A retard like me walking into your room will damage your reputation, so they figured you would give our family a huge amount of hush money to keep our mouth shut. What if something did happen between us? Vincent leaned towards her, with the tip of his nose coming closer to hers. Looking straight into his dark eyes, Emily couldn't tell what was on his mind. Pointing at herself, Emily blinked and said nervously, I'm a little retard. I know. Vincent glanced at her, looking intrigued. That's good. Why was Vincent so different from his public image? Get dressed and I'll send you back. Vincent pointed at a brand new white dress on the bed. Uneasy, Emily shrank back and said, I can go back on my own. He once again leaned towards her, with his two arms pressed against the wall above her head. Emily didn't dare to look up. Suddenly, Vincent's husky voice sounded, which was like the thunder bursting her eardrums. You stayed in my room for an entire hour. Having you go back alone is not what a gentleman should do. This was totally out of her expectation. In the banquet hall, more than half of the people had left. It was already 10:30 in the evening. Beverly looked elegant and calm, but she was actually restless. Haven't you found her yet? Elsie was also anxious. No, the Scavos also sent men to help find her, but they failed. Damn it, where did she go? Beverly was so angry that she almost lost her composure. Mom, Elsie suddenly grabbed her mother by the arm. Beverly looked at her, impatient. What's wrong? Elsie stared in one direction and tugged at her mom's sleeve with great strength. Mom. Beverly shook her hand off in annoyance. Just go straight to the point. I've told you, keep your grace no matter what happens. Before Beverly could finish her sentence, she looked in that direction and saw Emily and the man beside her. Mr. Vincent, Beverly cried out in surprise. Billionaire's Reborn Baby Chapter 5. Standing on the stairs, Emily was in a pure white dress. On her delicate face were two big but glazed eyes. She looked quite adorable with her lips pouting. The man beside her was in a black suit. He looked exceptionally tall with handsome features, characterized by thick eyebrows, a straight nose, and a well-defined jaw. However, his profile gave an air of aloofness. When his cold eyes swept around the hall, many guests did not even dare to look at him. It was Vincent who didn't turn up at tonight's banquet. Beverly immediately walked over with Elsie. I am so sorry about my daughter. Mr. Vincent, I apologize for her. Although Beverly looked she meant it, she couldn't conceal her joy. Perhaps seeing her youngest daughter stand by Vincent's side was enough to satisfy her vanity. Elsie also said softly, Emily, come over. However, Elsie couldn't help but get puzzled. How come Vincent was with her retarded sister? Why didn't he throw her out in disgust? It was said that every woman sneaking into Vincent's room on previous banquets was thrown out by him mercilessly. The moment Emily saw Elsie, she thought of the knife that her sister used to disfigure her, feeling devoured by hate, but deliberately shrank back and grabbed onto Vincent's sleeve. With an awkward expression, Elsie asked, Emily? What was wrong with Emily? The effects of the aphrodisiac seemed to have worn off. Vincent couldn't be the one helping her with that, could he? Emily's look of fear also confused Elsie. Did Emily know she was the one drugging her? That was impossible. Emily was just a retard. How could she know all this? With a lot on her mind, Elsie still pretended to be gentle. She asked softly, Emily, what's wrong? Pouting, Emily burst into crying. Elsie, I'm so scared. Elliot wasn't around and I couldn't find him. The water is so cold. My head hurts. No one noticed that Vincent raised his eyebrows for a second. The guests were instantly in an uproar. Emily's few words were enough for them to get the whole picture. It turned out that this retarded girl went to look for her brother. However, instead of finding him, she accidentally fell into Vincent's pool and was then saved by him. However, Elliot didn't even attend the banquet. Therefore, it was beyond doubt that Beverly and Elsie told a lie to Emily. All the guests present turned to look at them with contempt. Although Emily of the Britt family was a legitimate daughter, she was retarded after all and was no threat to Beverly. Why was the stepmother ill-treating her so? On today's occasion, instead of taking good care of Emily, Beverly asked her to go to Vincent's room to look for Elliot. She must have an ulterior motive. Don't cry, honey. What exactly is going on? With feigned care, Beverly held Emily in her arms and said, be good, and Mom will take you home right away. Auntie, I want to see my mother, Emily sobbed. Beverly's face immediately turned pale. How she wished she could tear Emily apart. However, she managed to put on a soft look. Okay, as long as you stop crying, I'll take you to see whoever you want to see. Elsie tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ears and smiled sweetly at Vincent. Thank you for saving my sister, Mr. Vincent. The assistant behind Vincent came over and said politely with a smile, it's not enough to show your sincerity by merely saying this. Mr. Vincent, you mean? Elsie revealed a shyer smile. If Vincent asked her how she was about to thank him, she could offer him dinner. In that way, the water in the pool has been polluted by Miss Emily and Mr. Vincent is really not happy about that. He is going to demolish it and build a new one. With the tablet in his hands, Vincent's assistant quoted the price. Mrs. Britt, please prepare the reconstruction fees as quickly as possible, for we are in a hurry to start our work. Elsie was dumbfounded, and it took her a long time to regain her senses. Emily, who was pretending to be retarded, almost laughed out in the middle of her crying. Fortunately, no one paid attention to her. As a sophisticated woman, Beverly quickly came to her senses. No problem, she replied with a forced smile. She looked like she would weep in the next second. Vincent finally started to talk, but his words were for Emily. Come here, I'll send you back. Beverly opened her mouth wide in surprise. Even Elsie couldn't control her facial expression and glared at Emily in astonishment. Other guests present felt the same way. How come Vincent wanted to send a retarded girl home? Did he take a fancy to her? Billionaire's Reborn Baby Chapter 6. Of all the ladies coming to the banquet arranged for him today, he was interested in that retard of the Britt family. If Mr. Rolando, Vincent's father, hadn't left early, he would have fainted from anger. Emily was puzzled for a while and then she continued to pout and whine, having no idea what Vincent was up to. Beverly pushed her towards Vincent and said, quick, follow Mr. Vincent. An unhappy look showed up on Emily's palm-sized face, and this time she wasn't faking. Vincent swept a glance at her. He reached out, taking her by the wrist and took her to the door. The guests gasped again. The rumored celibate Mr. Vincent was now holding the hand of a woman, no, a retard. Vincent's guards, including his assistant, were all dumbfounded. Then, they rushed out to get his car ready and pulled open the car door for them. Emily looked back and found Beverly and Elsie looking at her with mixed feelings. Seeing Emily turning around, they put on smiles and waved at her. Go on, we will be back soon. Emily still pouted with tears hanging on her face. She stood in front of the car door and refused to get in. Even as a retard, she knew who her family was. How could she get into a stranger's car for no reason, even when this stranger had saved her? However, she knew nothing about life-saving. All she knew was, just as she was standing, the assistant carried a plate full of cakes and pastries into the car. Emily's eyes lit up and she immediately followed him in. Not far away, seeing what happened just now, the others couldn't help but sigh. A retard indeed. Among all the guests enjoying the show, Elsie gritted her teeth. How could that retard get into Mr. Vincent's car? Call your father and ask him to invite Mr. Vincent in. Beverly hastily dragged Elsie out and said, we must go now. The hatred in Elsie's heart ran so deep. Why was their brother Elliot so kind to that retard and now, Mr. Vincent, too? What was it about her? In the car, when Emily finished the last mango cake, they were already far away from the Scavos. With no one seeing her, she didn't need to play dumb. Turning her head, she discovered that the man beside her was sitting upright, solemnly staring at her. She didn't know how long he had been watching. Emily was lost for words. Should she continue playing dumb? Emily thought for a while before giving Vincent an embarrassed smile, thank you. Vincent's assistant in the passenger seat peeked at them through the rearview mirror despite himself. Miss Emily was such an excellent actress that even he was almost tricked. He had no idea why she had been playing dumb for these years. Vincent chose to play along with her. He asked in a deep and low voice, need more? He wiped off the cream on her lips with his thumb. Although shocked, Emily didn't feel awkward. Back at home, her brother was kind to her, too. Vincent probably regarded her as his sister. No, thanks, I'm all set, Emily nodded. Good, Vincent was terse. Then he said no more. Inside the dimly lit car, only streetlights flashed sporadically through the window, reflecting the intimidating outline of the person beside her. After a while, Emily cast Vincent a glance and asked, anything you want to ask? What? He turned his head. His face looked fantastic with his cold expression. She could see his trim eyebrows and thin lips through streamed streetlights. Half of his face was shadowed, and the indifference and coldness overflowed from his eyes. He looked extremely handsome even with a blank, expressionless face. Emily was close to her brother, who was also handsome. So, she wasn't charmed by Vincent but found him dangerous. She leaned against the window and hesitantly said, like, why would I know that you would die next year? Billionaire's Reborn Baby Chapter 8. Elliot Britt, the eldest child of the Britts, didn't come home until nearly midnight. As soon as he went in, he heard what happened from the butler. Normally, he would only say goodnight to Emily after taking a shower. But today, he walked straight into her bedroom. Emily was pretending to be asleep. Ever since she realized that she was reborn, she had no idea how to face Elliot. In her previous life, Elsie told her Elliot loved her before she died. His words still echoed in Emily's mind. In her previous life, Elliot had fought with a man for her and was seriously injured, but Emily failed to see him in the hospital before he died. She felt warm on her forehead. It was Elliot's palm. Elliot stroked Emily's forehead and sighed, I'm sorry. I'll make sure it won't happen again. There was a knock on the door from outside. The butler brought in a bowl and said, Mr. Elliot, the ginger soup. Elliot turned around and took it, gesturing for him to leave. Before the butler left, he glanced at Emily who was sleeping on the bed, and thought to himself, Miss Emily is getting more and more beautiful. Too bad she was mentally disabled. Emily, wake up and drink your cola. Elliot gently shook her shoulder. Emily remembered in her previous life, whenever she was ill, Elliot would let her drink cola, which in fact was medicine hard to swallow. She pretended to wake from her slumber and mumbled, Elliot? Elliot gazed at her tenderly. Good girl, drink the cola before you go to sleep. She drank the ginger soup up, which had real cola in it, so it was not so pungent. She finished it and felt warm soon. She lay down and looked at Elliot with sleepy eyes, saying, Good night, Elliot. Elliot stroked her forehead and said, Good night. As soon as the door closed, Emily opened her eyes. She locked her room from inside, went onto the balcony, and sneaked into the balcony next door. She held a knife stolen from the kitchen. The person who killed her in her previous life lived just in the next room. How could she sleep? She still remembered the agony of the dagger slicing her cheek, the temperature, and the smell of the blood. She held the knife tightly and trembled with anger. However, to her surprise, Elsie was not here. The lights in her room were still on, and there were some papers on her bed and dresser. The quietness suggested that Elsie wasn't in the bathroom, either. Where could she be in the middle of the night? She glanced at the papers on the bed and was dumbfounded. It was the bidding documents of the Brit Group. Elliot had told her in her previous life that the bidding documents had been tampered with, causing his offer to be 3 times lower than that of other competitors. In the end, it was rejected by the judges. Why were the bidding documents here? The sound of footsteps came from outside. Emily scurried into the balcony and secretly looked inside. She found that Elsie put the documents on the bed under her sheets and patted the bed satisfactorily. A call came in. Elsie took the call and said something. Emily tried to hear what she said but failed. She tried her best to lean her head forward. She accidentally knocked over a flower pot, making a sound. Who's there? Elsie's face changed drastically. She turned on the lights on the balcony and rushed outside, only to find a cat squatting under the flower pot. Oh, it's you, kitten. Why are you still awake? Picking up the cat, Elsie stroked her head and put her back into her nest. Emily curled up and hid behind the flower pot rack on the balcony next door. She didn't dare take a breath until Elsie turned off the lights. She could not kill Elsie now, for she had to find the person behind her. And how should she tell Elliot about the bidding document? Billionaire's Reborn Baby Chapter 9. Emily always got up late in the morning, so she didn't get to see Elliot so often. But she woke up very early the next day. When she went downstairs, she saw him having breakfast in the dining room. Elliot liked to wear white shirts. With the collar unbuttoned, he looked casual and carefree. He had single-edged eyelids and thin lips, and he liked to read the news on his phone when he had breakfast. Emily had always felt that Elliot was the most handsome guy until she met Vincent yesterday. However, Vincent only had a handsome look, while Elliot was handsome from the inside out. Emily liked him from the bottom of her heart, but thinking of Elsie's words, she realized she couldn't get too close to him in the future. Why are you up so early? Elliot saw her. Emily smiled and rushed over. Elliot. Elliot pulled out a chair for her and asked again, didn't you sleep well last night? Why did you get up so early? Emily smiled and sat over, but her gaze was fixed on the documents on the dining table. Hearing this, she rubbed her belly and pouted, I'm hungry. Elliot rubbed her head and tilted his head to the kitchen. Lola, bring out the sandwiches. But that's Miss Elsie's. Before Lola could finish her sentence, she saw Elliot's gloomy face. She immediately shut her mouth and could only make Elsie another before she lost her temper. I have to go to the company. Harold will take you to the garden after breakfast, all right? Elliot wiped his mouth and stood up. Hearing this, Emily became anxious. She glanced at the milk that Elliot hadn't finished. She immediately took it up and wanted to give him. Elliot, finish your milk or Dad would be angry. Elliot nodded, smiling. The next moment, Emily's hand shook and she spilled the milk on the bidding documents. Elsie, who had just come downstairs, cried out when she saw this. What's going on? Seeming to be frightened, Emily stood there blankly, her face pale white, her big eyes filling with panic and fear. It's fine, I can print out another copy in the company. Elliot threw the documents aside and helped clean Emily's hands with a tissue. Elsie rushed to the dining table and glared at Emily. What's wrong with you? Emily shrank back and sobbed. Sorry, Elliot. I just want you to finish your milk. Elliot kept smiling. He was taller than Emily, so he always half-crouched while talking to her. He said as if he was talking to a little kid, "It's not your fault. Don't worry, I must go to work. Be a good girl and wait for me to come back, okay?" Okay. Emily nodded and prayed inwardly. Please let Elliot find out that the documents were tampered with. Please. Elsie couldn't help but roll her eyes. She is not 3 years old. You've spoiled her. She ruined your documents, and you said nothing. Elliot's face turned cold and he lowered his voice. I know that it was your doing last night. Thank God Emily is fine. But I warn you, if anything happens to her, I will come for you. Elliot, Elsie yelled, I'm your real family. He left without turning back. Elsie stamped her feet in anger. Emily's stupid face annoyed her more. She pivoted around and was about to leave. After walking a few steps, she remembered something and turned back and shouted in the direction of the kitchen, Lola. Where's my breakfast? Billionaire's Reborn Baby Chapter 10. Almost done. Elsie looked at her watch and said, I'm going to be late. It'll be ready soon. Lola was nervous. She spent most of her time making Elsie's breakfast, but today Emily took it. She had to make Elsie another one. Emily took up the sandwich in front of her and said, You can have mine. Don't be angry, okay? I don't want the food of a retard, Elsie snorted. What's with all the noise? Beverly pressed her fingers onto her temples and walked over. She looked at Elsie and said, Why haven't you left yet? Elsie furiously walked over to Beverly and pointed at Emily. Mom, you don't know how Elliot dotes on this retard. She spilled milk on his documents. Elliot said nothing to her and blamed me instead. Don't say the word, retard, again. Beverly was very distressed about her money for repairing Vincent's pool, so she did not sleep well last night. Seeing this in the morning, she felt her head ache even more. She sat on the sofa and said to Lola, Give me a glass of honey water. Yes, Beverly, Lola answered in the kitchen. Dad isn't here. I can call her whatever I want. Elsie glared at Emily and saw sliced tomatoes and bacon in the sandwiches. She cried out, You're eating my sandwiches. Emily was startled and the sandwiches fell to the ground. She picked it up and raised it in front of Elsie. You can have mine. Go away. I'm not eating things on the ground. Elsie pushed her in disgust. Emily staggered. She could have steadied herself. But then she caught a glimpse of the leather shoes at the door. She realized something and crashed herself to the edge of the table before falling to the ground. She sobbed, Elsie, why did you push me? Lola was about to bring out the honey water when she saw this. She was already used to it, but today, she saw a person standing at the door. She was so scared that she almost dropped the glass. Beverly raised her head and said impatiently, Why are you still standing here? Bring it over. Lowering her head, Lola put the honey water on the tea table. Drinking some water and pressing down on her temples, Beverly closed her eyes and said to Elsie, Pull her up. If your father sees that, he'll snap. Didn't he leave early for work? Elsie walked over sullenly and kicked Emily's calf. Get up, I didn't push you. You fell on your own, you know that? Emily sobbed and nodded, I know. Elsie, don't be angry, okay? Beverly raised her eyes and said to Elsie, Go to school now before the servants saw you. Lola won't turn me in. Even if Dad sees me, Before Elsie could finish her sentence, she turned around and saw the person at the door. She was slack-jawed. Dad, how? Why are you back? Beverly also stood up in surprise. Maury sneered as he came in. He walked to Elsie step by step, his face sterner than ever. Even if I see you, you will what? Tell me. Elsie's face went pale. She hastily hid behind Beverly and cried in panic, Mom. Beverly patted Elsie's hand to comfort her and walked to her husband. She held his arm and asked, Why did you come back? Did you forget something? 1.